Look at that, we've got music now, haven't we? It's all snazzy. Welcome to the Odd Shaped Balls podcast. I'm Andy Thompson, and with me today is BBC Cumbria's Jordan Weir and Dan Payne. How are we doing?
So it's BBC's Jordan and Dan Payne. Thanks.
I'll put you in the same bracket.
All right, straight on.
Do you want your own title?
Yes, please. I want a proper intro. Start again.
No. Thanks to our main podcast sponsor, Santa Marina. Say something nice about them, Daniel.
Yeah, big thank you to Santa Marina and the Becca family down there. Santa Marina Evening and Deli now, of course. The best sandwiches and the best Italian in the whole of Cumbria.
Oof.
Statement.
That's a big claim tonight.
Wait till you try it. We've actually brought some in tonight. We've got some Santa Marina food in front of us for me and Andrew. Becca unfortunately missed out. Their loss is our gain, Andrew.
I suppose we better talk about Becca as well. But first of all, we'd like to say another thank you to our episode 6 sponsor.
Yeah, thank you very much to Lee Macaulay Photography. Lee does some fantastic work with us down at Whitehaven. He's done all the sort of player reveal videos that we've seen across social media over the last week or so with Whitehaven signings and re-signings and announcements, and more to come from Lee. But he does, fantastic photography. He's involved in the social media up at Kells. He's doing photographs of St Benedict's Rugby Union. Just get the other code in. But yeah, he's doing some great work, is Lee, at the moment, and mainly volunteer work. So it's much appreciated, as is the sponsorship of the pod. So thank you very much, Lee.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. Much appreciated, mate.
Thanks, Lee.
So going on to Becca, obviously, we're a podcaster down this week, aren't we? Are we going to make up a lie, or are we just going to say she has a bedtime? And
well, I seen how nasty you were to me.
Oh, you go for it. You get stuck in, mate.
No, I was just going to say she's just got work commitments, bless her. We all work hard for our money, some of us.
Some more than others.
And some of it's just a massive con against all people, isn't it?
You had to get it in, didn't you? You had to do it.
So should we go into the new section?
Yeah.
So obviously we'll leave our signing news out, because we'll do an episode midweek, maybe. We'll call that Wednesday, release it Thursday for all the signings. I imagine greedy Whitehaven will have a few more in by then, at the expense of some amateur clubs.
Just a thumbs up.
Just ruining amateur rugby league across the West Coast. Welcome to Whitehaven.
So
I've had a message from someone like that with the last one out at West Cumbrian amateur rugby league, knocked the lights off, and I was like, I sort of see what you mean. I don't think it's just going to be us, though. I think the neighbours up the road, Workington, are going to be doing something similar over the next few weeks as well. If the West Cumbrian rumour mill, the Sellafield rumour mill is true, which it normally is, to be fair. But yeah, obviously Whitehaven have announced a few, which we're going to go into Wednesday, I think you said, Andy, yeah?
Yeah, probably release that the Thursday, I think. So yeah, we'll record that the Wednesday. So going into the news side of it, so it's come out James Newton's going to be walking 1 kilometre a day for 6 weeks to raise money for the Rugby League Benevolent Fund.
Yeah, I think he's being told what he can do. He can walk as 1 kilometre a day, which, considering some of the stuff that Newton was doing, obviously before the injury, you're seeing him on sort of stories and such things like that. He was in farms, he was in fields, and and obviously was pretty much playing 80 minutes pretty much every other week as well. It just shows you what a nasty injury he's had, that he's only able to walk 1 kilometre a day. But fair play to him for sticking to it and doing as much as he can, and obviously raising money for the Rugby League Benevolent Fund, who reached out straight away and offered their support and help following Newsy's injury in that last game of the season. And he just wants to step up and say thank you where he can.
Yeah, it's great to see he's just giving back straight away as well. So moving on, Will Evans, Hugh Irving and Max Clark represented Wales versus Delaney Bedwards Jamaica. The final score there was 22-16, and Hugh and Max both made it on the score sheet for that on their debuts as well, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, obviously both of them making their pro debuts for Wales. Hugh played for the Welsh side that played against Cumbria last year, but it was sort of like a select side. It was a side made up of youngsters, probably looking forward to this, to this sort of series that they've got. They played Jamaica in sort of a warm up before going into the qualifiers next week. I think it is. They're making the trip to I think they're already over in France. I think I seen on Will Evans' story that they've made the trip over and they're going to be playing over the next sort of 7 to 10 days. So yeah, great to see that three of our Cumbrian representatives were involved. Like you said, 2 of them getting on the score sheet.
And they've received another call up as well. That news has come out last week
for the European qualifiers. Who then this is for like the Rugby League World Cup, but then the winner of this doesn't then automatically get into the World Cup, then got to go into another playoff next year. It's just the way rugby league and it goes. No, nothing's ever simple. But obviously, France was due to be hosting the World Cup in 2026, was it? But they've pulled out. Australia's stepped in, but it's gone from 16 teams to 10 teams. So, yeah, nothing's ever simple in rugby league, is it?
No, definitely not. Just sticking with the call-ups as well. For Scotland, we've got Charlie Emsley and Brett Carter from Barra, Guy Graham at Whitehaven and Johnny Hutton from Town, all representing Scotland versus Lucas Castle's Ireland. I think that's getting played on the 27th at Gateshead, isn't it?
Yeah. Step up that for Charlie as well. I say step up. He's done that before. When he came through, was one of the newbies to the team a few years ago, and I know his family, and his dad especially, very proud Scotsman. Do you know his dad?
No, I know his mum through Leeds and stuff like that.
Oh, right. So you kind of know the family then, but yeah, it's a big deal for them, and it's always puts a smile on my face whenever I see Charlie in that Scotland lineup, and it's just one out for the parents. I absolutely love to see it. So go well there, big Charlie Emsley.
Yeah, and congratulations to the rest of them as well. So we'll stay in patch with them. Up the Barra. So moving on as well. So we've got Shane Toe's been granted his testimonial season as well. So it was well deserved for Shane after 10 years at the club. And a new kit as well, been revealed for Barra's 150th year.
Yeah, the old Dennis the Menace kit.
Are you a fan of it?
I don't mind it, to be fair. I don't mind it. I don't know how much they're going to wear it.
It's a home kit.
Have they announced it as a home kit?
It's a home kit, yeah.
Ooh, that's bold, isn't it?
Yeah,
to be fair, they did it for I think it was the 75th anniversary of Craven Park, and they had a very similar strip, black and white. It was a bit before this new material came into rugby. It was all the old cotton stuff and the old school stuff.
And when Ranger put about 2 stone on.
yeah, it was one of them ones. It's very similar to that, but yeah, I kind of like it. I didn't realise, to be fair, it was the new home strip for the season.
Yeah, I got it pre-ordered as well. I was a fan of it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I didn't think they'd done that size.
Oh. And that's the popcorn and the kettle black there, isn't it? The mirrors clearly don't work.
Who needs enemies with friends like that? I was going to say matters, but you're South Cumbrian, so you don't do matters, do you? Who needs enemies with friends like that? Thousands.
Have you seen the kit, Jordan? Are you a fan of it?
Yeah, I think it's one of them. It's probably going to be a Marmite, but I think it's one of them. O'Neill's don't do bad gear, do they? It's good gear as O'Neill's, and it's just a shame Whitehaven owed them so much money over the years. But yeah, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? But yeah, no, O'Neill's do good gear. I don't think I've ever seen O'Neill's do bad gear, to be honest. And yeah, I think it's one of them. It'll probably be a bit Marmite. You mean, I'm thinking obviously the traditional modern day colours of the Raiders are blue, but yeah, something a bit different out there. And you'd imagine probably the away shirt or something will be blue for, to keep with the colours. But yeah, no, I'm a fan. I mean, apart from the fact it's got a Barrow badge on it, but apart from that, it's all right.
And a championship badge.
Saying, as a Whitehaven fan as well, you'll have to wait another 136 years to celebrate your 150th year, won't you? Since you've only been in existence since, was it 2010?
We had a 75th anniversary last year.
No, it's a lie, isn't it? Whitehaven 2010. That's what it says on your Facebook page.
I'm trying to amend that, behave.
I'm sticking with Facebook on that. So moving through to Town's presentation evening, which was a very late one, wasn't it?
Very late.
Well timed after our...
No, we praise him. We do a full podcast, praise him. Well, I say praise, a review of work, and then they go and shut that on us after the podcast. How dare they?
Wrong-uns.
Yeah.
So, Chairman's Award went to Mark McSherry. The TRSC's Committee's Player of the Year is Jack Stevenson. Derwent Park Supporter Club Player of the Year was Cal Forbear. Town Supporters Player of the Year, Jordan Burns. Newquest Player of the Year was Jake Bradley. I think he got man of the match when you did comms on that one, the second rower.
Good player is Jake Bradley.
Yeah.
Very good player.
Do you know much about him?
Just saying, he's a good player.
Big fan of his, yeah. Is your mate at Barrow a big fan of his as well? Top point scorer, Cal Forber. Top try scorer, Matty Henson. Young Player of the Year, Zarin Gallier. Players Player, Matty Henson. Most improved was JJ Key. Player of the Years was Matty Henson and Jordan Burns, who shared that. Who he's made the trip across, hasn't he?
He's returned home. I remember having, and I said this in the interview with him, and I'm going to delve a bit deeper into this one. I had a conversation with Jordan. He popped up on my Facebook memories 3 years ago when he decided he was making the step back to the professional game. I had a drunken conversation with him in Las Americas in Tenerife. We'd run into each other a couple of times in Tenerife of me and Jordan, and always enjoy a beer when we're over there. And he said, I'm thinking of coming back. I said, all right. He said, Towns approached me. I said, have you had anything from Whitehaven? No, but I want to talk. I'll have a crack with them. So drunkily messaged Ashley Kilpatrick and Jonty Gawley at like 2:20 in the morning, whatever day it was in Tenerife. And I was like, you're aware that Jordan's wanting to come back and there's a potential there? And I went away from that drunken conversation thinking, oh, great, Jordan's coming back. It's going to be great, fantastic. And then 6 weeks later, the town announced he'd signed alongside his brother and they'd done this massive reveal up at Kells for him. And I thought, you beep. And then I seen him, by the time it was announced, it was about another 6 weeks later when the Ike South Memorial game was happening, and he was at the recreation ground and he was walking down and he's walking towards him, and I just went, and you, what do you think? And he just went, I'm sorry, and just sort of shaking his head. But no, in all fairness to Jordan, he went to town, he had his reasons. He's, as he said, he's fell back in the game, fell back in love with the game of rugby league. So thanks to Working for doing that, for giving him his love of rugby league back. He left Whitehaven at the back end of 2019, and I think it wasn't the prettiest of leaving a club. That's I think on that occasion, but he's back at the recreation ground and he'll be wearing chocolate blue and gold next year, which I'm so excited to see.
We'll go into more in it, obviously, on next week's episode with the next transfer window one we'll do on Wednesday, will come out Thursday. But we'll go over more of the amateur clubs you've ruined as well. So, going into Dan's trivia, because this didn't go down well, did it?
Why? I think it went down great.
Okay.
It was a tricky one. It was just, I think it was the fact that the only person that got it right was the guy that played with them all. So,
we didn't take that into consideration, did we?
No, not really. But rules are rules. So congratulations, Phil Ackey. To be fair to Phil, he didn't full name them. He gave people a chance, and he admitted that he knew them all because he played with them. So, but a shout out, as promised. Phil Atkinson, congratulations to you, sir. You did get this week's trivia right, which 6 players played for all 4 Cumbrian clubs. That's Barrow, Whitehaven, Wookington, and Carlisle. Sorry, it's Cumbria then. They were, drumroll please, Darren Holt, Gary Charlton, Simon Knox, Willie Burns, Gary Ruddy, and the one and only Tanny Manahera.
I didn't realise Tanny had done all 4. When he come up and he seen TM, I was like, wow, I could, especially here, and as obviously as a foreigner to do it as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, he obviously, he's obviously not Cumbrian, not English. So to do all 4 Cumbrian clubs, fair play to him as well. But yeah, I didn't realise Tanny was one of them. Tanny obviously completed that later on then, because Tanny's last club was Whitehaven, and I think he was playing rugby union, and Whitehaven had a injury crisis at halfback, and he come out and played alongside Greg McNally. And I think obviously Tanny was probably old enough to be Greg's dad. But yeah, that was, I couldn't remember. Greg obviously made his debut on telly on Sky. I don't know if that was Tanny's debut as well. I think I remember it might have been, or it might only been his second or third appearance. But yeah, I didn't realise Tanny had done all 4. Obviously, I knew he'd played for Workington, and I subbed in there that he played for Carlisle, but I didn't realise he'd done the Raiders as well.
Yeah, big shout out as well to Steve Andrews for providing us with these questions about a Raiders club historian. He knows his stuff. He's probably got it written down in front of him. That's how he knows it. It's cheating, isn't it? I don't know. He has provided me with a few more, though. Do you want to do another one for coming up this week? Or?
Yeah, I was hoping you hadn't. I want one, but I was hoping I could give you some criticism for not preparing for it, but you've come prepared, so I'm absolutely gutted.
I've got 2. I'm double prepared.
Oh, go for one. Go for one. Just keep it.
I can either do one relating to 70s, 80s, or I can do one more 90s, 90s.
Let's do 90s, 90s.
The 90s, 90s. We'll come back to the older one then. So, you ready? Make sure I do this without saying the answer. Yeah, I've got it in front of me. Which player had a 12-year professional career between 1998 and 2010, played for Barrow, Workington, and Whitehaven, and had a brother who also played first-team rugby at Barrow? You like that one?
Yeah.
You can see the cogs turning. He comes out with some crackers, does Mr. Andrews. Yep. So one more time, just for those that want that one again. Which player who had a 12-year professional career between 1998 and 2010 played for Barrow, Workington and Whitehaven, and also had a brother who played first-team rugby for Barrow? There is this week's trivia. we will put that on social media as well. Wait for Phil Hackett to give us the answer again. Phil, if you get this one right this week, you're banned. You're not getting two shout-outs, so you can put all your initials in that you want, because you probably will know it. Phil's played with everybody. So, yeah, that's this. Andy's wants to get on with the show, but he's trying to think.
I'm trying to mull that one over.
When did you, when was it you became a fan, part of the RBA, if you will?
I'd say it was like 2005, 2006.
Yeah, so it'll be a play that
that's the sort of, that's sort of the memories I have, yeah.
So both of you, I imagine, would have watched it. I know I have, obviously. I've seen the answer now, but to be fair, I guessed it and I got it wrong, but only because I was too far ahead. I didn't go, I was trying to think late 90s. I was thinking more towards the 2010 end when I had a guess.
Build-wise, we're talking small, high.
Can't give too much away. I don't know how many clues I can give.
Can I have an order? Can I have an order of which clubs they played for? Like, so which order have they played, or is that going to give too much away?
I couldn't tell you, to be honest. I'm going to assume, from what I know of the player, I'm going to say started at Barrow, but I'm purely guessing here.
Right.
I think he was just one of them players that did the loops when obviously, I'm going to say once the Des Johnson money started coming in, he was one of them players that went down the pecking order. So I'm just assuming he's moved on at that stage to do the work and Whitehaven route. But again, I'm guesstimating here.
I've got 3 family names in my head.
Yeah,
that for the rugby siblings.
That's the way to go. It's just
Oh,
Jordan's just there.
So you just jump on the microphone.
I won't say. I'll say it off. See if I'm right, and I'll be incredibly smug in the second part if I am. So we're going to change the sort of the structure up a little bit for now, just for this episode, as Dan's having to go soon because he's got a cult meeting. They've got a new goat. They've got a slaughter, and kill a virgin or whatever else he's do with that. So
don't be jealous.
We're going to rebrand our heroes and houses segment to Kangaroo Court, keeping it family friendly. You know.
Okay.
I'm sick of you and Becca and Jordan mucking up this podcast with your foul language. So
you've changed, Thompson. You've changed.
Yeah.
Behave yourself.
Me. So yeah, Kangaroo Court. So who do we think needs to be called out for their crimes against rugby league?
Don't start with me. I've been busy all week.
Castleford.
Castleford, go on.
Oh, I like that one.
Sack Craig Lingard. New owner's come in. He's been there 4 or 5 days and they've sacked him.
When that happened? This is news to me.
Today.
That'll be why then, because I've been busy. Yeah,
that makes a change. They got the press release through earlier on and saying Lingard leaves Tigers. I was like, he must have took on a job elsewhere. No, new owners come in, got rid. I think Craig done a cracking job, probably under what wasn't the best squad that was put together like last season. Obviously, he was the assistant coach when he went in and then stuck the reins. And I like Craig. He's always have a cracker, and he's done a cracking job at Batley. Got them to the grand final, and the 80 minutes away from Super League only a couple of seasons ago, and he's got his chance at Super League. And yeah, so I'm calling out Castleford, especially their new owner. I think, is it Martin Jepson? I might be wrong. That name seems to ring a bell, but yeah, he's come in and straight away he's got rid. So he's obviously got a fella in mind. He's probably maybe done some deals behind the scenes, and I don't want to be saying this. He's maybe done some deals behind the scenes. If this takeover does come off, I want you to be coming in with me, but. Yeah, no, I'm not the biggest fan of that. But he says he wants to give his whoever the new coach is going to be, he wants to give him an opportunity to shape the pre-season, which I understand. But yeah, I don't think the decision will have been too popular with majority of the Castleford fans that he's going to be leaving the jungle.
So not a fan of board members coming in and getting rid of a coach.
We could discuss about that later on, couldn't we?
Touche, Thompson. I'm going to high five
on that one. Yes,
I like that one. That's
Shots
definitely
fired.
A high five moment.
I'll give you an air high five from up west.
For me, Kangaroo Court this week, I'm going to go with Toulouse purely because they put a great run together. They took a very entertaining game against Bradford, an informed Bradford as well, may I add, to beat them by a point to get themselves to the final, and never showed up in that game. I was ready for an absolute cracker. I was expecting Wakefield to win, but I thought Toulouse would give them a game. I mean, I think Toulouse needs some extra people in the pack there, you never know. It might beef them up a little bit, but they were massively disappointing for me. I think that was absolutely shocking. Credit to Wakefield. I also don't know what I make of this stat. I text you, didn't I, for Max Jowett when he hit the 498 points in this. Credit to him, that's a hell of a record. But I mean, it was like men against boys for Wakefield this season. So it's like it's a lot of points, but in the circumstances, I think that's the only way we would have got it. And I think it's the only time we'll ever see it again.
In like the build up to the game as well, like, yeah, Powell was on giving this little sob story about, oh yeah, we've had to do a complete rebuild, we've done this, we've done that. One, you've got a better squad than what you had in the Super League. And two, like that team you've got, most teams won't be able to afford one of them players. And now you're coming in with all these superstars and people who are still Super League level.
Yeah.
And then acting like it's a underdog story. It's not. You just got to pump everyone in the league.
Yeah.
Well, except for Toulouse, who I think beat them at their spot, I think.
Yeah.
It was the only blemish on that record. And then, like you just said, they just didn't turn up Toulouse at all. And I was thinking,
awful.
like with your French teams, you sort of expect that aggression, don't you? Because it's, you know, they play obviously the fancy stuff as well, but it's the aggressive packs, and that's why you like watching the French teams, because you're always going to be like a little bit of niggle, a bit of biff. And yeah, they just rolled over and had the belly stickle, didn't they? Really?
They really did. Disappointing my final for me. That wasn't a great advert, was it? As a game, as a spectacle, it was just a walk in the park, really. Wakefield. Yeah, it took him 20 minutes to sort of get going, but I think after that, it was just a bit of a disappointing flop of a match.
Yeah.
So what you're telling me is the French surrendered?
Oof.
Hey.
Yeah,
you know,
say that. Over to you, Mr. Thompson, for your kangaroo court.
For my kangaroo court, I'm calling in Workington Town Rugby Club, right? Because they've waited until after we've done our review, right? And there was nothing up on their social media, because I looked to see when their presentation was, just so we could try and like bulk it all as one. And then they go and release it after we've done all the news sections, so it's all crammed into the bottom part of my page. Believe it or not, prep goes into this podcast. As you
Really?
can probably clearly tell, yeah.
Are you sure?
Two pages worth. And yeah, so as I'm writing all this down as well, I've got the same part of the Tina Turner Simply the Best, that same bit of the song going on and on and on and on. And it's just, I used to like that song, and they've ruined it for me. So yeah, for being an inconvenience with for the podcast with the news, and for ruining Tina Turner Simply the Best for me. So yeah, it's really petty, but that's where I'm standing on that.
I like it.
Yeah.
We've called out 3 teams there.
Yeah.
We're all hard, aren't we?
Yeah, that's it.
Hiding behind our microphones and keyboards.
And if you want to fight, we'll all hide behind Jordan.
What? No. I'm a bucket kill, guys. Lover, not a fighter.
So another thing we've done as well this week is we've added a little thing to our podcast website called SpeakPipe.
Oh, yeah, I like this.
So if you do want to get your voice on the podcast, or you want to sort of set a talking point for us, you know, go on the website, go scroll a little bit down to the SpeakPipe section, click the link, and what you can do, it lets you do a 90-second audio recording, say your name, what team you support, and just, come say hi.
Yeah,
leave a comment. And
have a little bit of a fans forum, can't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guarantee Neil Walmsley, if you're listening, he'll be taking up about 14 minutes of a 90-second podcast soundbite. Yeah, I know there's a few people out there that like to make their thoughts and opinions and all, so this is your chance.
So going into the Whitehaven season review now then, Jordan. Obviously, it's just the grown-ups in the room now as Dan's gone to join his cult. But last week you caught up with Jonty as well, so we'll just do the intro for the Jonty interview before we go into the review.
Jonty, thank you very much for joining us on the Odd Shaped Balls podcast. Of course, it's not the first time you were on. You joined us a couple of weeks ago when we obviously discussed your announcement as a new head coach of Workington Town for the 2025 season onwards. But obviously, this afternoon we're going to be delving back into what was the 2024 season at Whitehaven. We're going to do sort of a season review. Obviously, it was a heck of a season, probably for all the wrong reasons towards the end. But going into the campaign, going into pre-season and then opening a couple of games, how comfortable were you with your squad? I know you'd discussed in terms of you probably wanted a few more numbers, but what was the target for Jonty Gawley's Whitehaven in the 2024 season?
Getting that 6th spot, Jordan, that was what our plans were behind closed doors, mate. And I thought with the quality, the quality that I had in the squad, I could have got there. It's just the numbers in the squad that is it 22. I can't remember what it was. 22. It was nowhere near like the 26, 27 I wanted. But I know to get them size squads, you've got to keep pretty happy as well, mind. So I was wary of that. But yeah, for the 3rd year run and the budget didn't get to what I wanted it to get till, and I had some class players on, mate. I was happy going in them first if everybody kept fit. I had my top 17 on the field, or lads challenging them at 21, 22, whatever it was, challenging for the players. I honestly thought if everybody stayed on the field, mate, we could we could do something this year. That was my goal. That was the behind closed doors to get to that sixth place.
So before we ruin the surprise of where he's finished, well, I go over a couple of your positives. So top point scorer was Dan's favourite player, Jake Carter, 122 points. This is for the league. And top try scorer, Jake Maizen, with 12 tries.
Yeah, the Jake's doing the business. Yeah, Jake Carter obviously, sort of can kick goals from anywhere, and I think if you have a look at his kicking average, would have probably been pretty good, probably been high 80s. I think if you were to look at it, and Jake Maizen, what a revelation he was. Obviously absent in the last few games of the season, but absolute revelation. There was talks on the grapevine that Whitehaven were trying to get him on loan at the back end of 2023. And I think there was some serious conversations had, but nothing ever come to fruition. And yeah, absolute live wire. He's got pace to burn, and eventually found his home at fullback. Obviously, initially it was sort of him and Adine Gebby fighting for that fullback berth, but following that, once he made that fullback berth his own, with sort of Gebby being in and out of the side initially, whether through fitness or bands, made that fullback spot his own and scored some fantastic tries. And what seems to be his last ever game in a Whitehaven shirt was them final moments in that game against Doncaster, where Ryan King with the chip over the top and Maizen got the ball and rounded Josh Guzdeck, went absolutely mental. Whitehaven have won it. Whitehaven have won it. And it was just one of them. It had been an emotional time, and it continued to be an emotional few weeks for Whitehaven after that, of course. But yeah, it was just one of them. He was an absolute live wire, and a real shame that he won't have got the opportunity to say goodbye in the way he wanted, unfortunately. But that's the way life and the cookie crumbles.
So going on to league position then, obviously 6th was the target. Where did you end up? 13th?
13th, and going down on points difference. They say life does roundabouts, and what is it comes to full circles. Whitehaven survived on points difference a season before, and then they go down on points difference. I mean, it wasn't as nowhere near as close this time round, was it? But there's a couple of games when you look back and you think, well, if you got the extra point here, or you get the extra point there, and you think, what could it have been? But did the Whitehaven of what we needed, where the club found itself at the end of this season, did it need Championship rugby in 2025? Probably not, because I don't think Whitehaven would be as a club if it was playing Championship rugby next season. I don't think it had the finance there to be able to do it. So while you don't want to be relegated, it's probably been a blessing for the club in terms of what they want to do now for the next few seasons under the stewardship of Anthony Murray. But yeah, you look back at a couple of games this season, which no doubt we'll touch on, Andy, but there's a couple of games this season you look and think and go, if, and if's a big word, isn't it? But yeah, just what if?
So it did start off extremely well for you as well. You had the win versus Swinton and Barrow for your first 2 games. I was there I travelled away to watch the Swinton and Barrow one a couple of days off chemo, and getting beat by you was the worst part of my week.
Oh, wow.
But, yeah, I'm going to say that. But yeah, it started well for you. I thought, Christ, we could be the ones from the Cumbrian ones who are in trouble here. But then you go on the run of 4 losses there, don't you, including the heavy defeat to Toulouse, 40 points to 4. But they are one of them teams out of Toulouse. I think it was going to be a comfortable season for them.
Yeah, it was always going to be. And you obviously mentioned we'd obviously just sort of the league season there, but sort of before that, it was a bit of a topsy-turvy pre-season. I remember going down to Widnes, being cold as anything in the middle of January and thinking, what the hell am I doing here? But Whitehaven were 22-10 up at Widnes with 10 minutes to go. And it was another one of Dan's favourite players, Rio Corkill, got sin-binned for slowing the ball down, but for slowing the restart down after the ball went dead. And I think that was Widnes's sort of a second or third game, and it was Whitehaven's first. But you look and you go, there's a team there, you look at Carter and Hannigan and Maizen and King doing what King does, and there's a team there, and you can see why Jonty was aiming for that 6th place. You've seen what Widnes done at times this season, and you can think, you can see why Jonty was excited about the team that he had. But with 22 players, it was always going to be tough. And that sort of started biting early on. We had loan players in from the second game of the season. Was it? I think Nathan Connell played fullback against the Raiders, and 43 players Whitehaven used this season, Andy, of which 20 would have a loans or dual edge. You just
How many of them covered loans?
2. But yeah, do you know what I mean? Like you can't get any consistency, and that's where Whitehaven struggled this season, consistency, because it wasn't talent, because I had it in abundance. We've just been through a load of players there. But yeah, that sort of back-to-back league games, that absolute mudbath against Swinton, and then me being able to get my revenge on Dan, and with the Jay Carter drop goal after he had the Ryan Johnston one on the Monday night the season before, and then 4 straight games. It was always going to be tough for Whitehaven, and I say tough because 4 consecutive home games. You can think, well, how's it tough? You're not having to travel for. Whitehaven didn't have an away game in this country till mid-May, which is crazy when you think about it. But yeah, them 4 games was always going to be tough because you weren't going to get the crowds in for all of them, because not everyone can afford to come week after week after week. Some people have to decide, obviously, and especially the times we've been through in the last 18 months or 24 months or so, it's been a real tough time. So not everyone's going to be able to do that. So the crowds weren't going to be the best. People were going to pick and choose the games. They were probably going to pick that opening game of the season and then your Good Friday game, and following that, it was always sort of going to be tough. And then it was Sheffield and Batley, or Batley and Sheffield, whichever way around it was. But that Sheffield side absolutely annihilated Whitehaven for 20 minutes, and they scored 5 tries. And then that Batley game was probably the worst. I say probably the worst. It was probably the worst home performance I've seen from Whitehaven this season, and probably for many a season. They were just so poor on that afternoon. And then going down to the south of France and 40 points to 4, and you said it looks like a toweling. Whitehaven could have been 12-0 in 6 or 7 minutes. Jake Maizen and Ryan King dropped the ball over the line. And it's a completely different game, especially the week before they've been beat by Swinton at home. So if you get into them early doors, you think, oh no, here we go again. But they couldn't do that. They couldn't take advantage, and then Toulouse do what Toulouse do. So yeah, it was like you say, it was a topsy-turvy start, including the 1895 and the Challenge Cup. But you think, yeah, like I said, there was optimism there to be excited for the season with some of the performances that they did put in.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the York victory as well, 36-16. That was obviously York went through a bit of trouble at the start of the season, but it was on paper and everything like that. They look like a team that should be up there challenging, really. Yeah,
and they were later on in the season, weren't they? Obviously under Mark Applegarth, and I think that was the writing on the wall for Andy Henderson. He's a great fella, Andrew Henderson. Any time I've been in his company, which is, it's been a few over the last few seasons, considering the work he's done for Premier, and I think I spoke to him at the Summer Bash a couple of years ago, and he's a cracking bloke. But yeah, for whatever reason, that opening to the season, it just didn't work for the night, and Whitehaven took full advantage. They were 30-0 up at the break, or 28-0 up, 30-0 up at the break, and then were 36-0 up after 50 minutes, away to York. How many sides have gone to York in the previous seasons, probably apart from Lee when Lee put 100 on them? How many sides have gone to York and put 36 unanswered points in them?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Exactly. And it was just one of them afternoons, and I'm thinking, I'm going to wake up in a minute. I'm going to wake up. This isn't happening. Whitehaven, this doesn't happen to Whitehaven sides. They normally end up having the ones putting 36 points on them after 50 minutes, and we've seen that a couple of times later on in the season. But everything just went right for Whitehaven on afternoon, and yeah, and then even then, York started hitting back in that final 20 minutes, and you think, they could still do this, because that's just the nature of Whitehaven as a Whitehaven fan. As soon as it starts conceding tries, you're thinking this could go 4, 5, or 6 tries here. This, if they don't put a stop to it, but. Yeah, absolute dreamland, being 36-0 up after 50 minutes, and it went from probably that Batley game probably only 2 or 3 weeks earlier, where you're putting in your potential worst performance of a home performance of the season, to then putting in probably your best performance of the season away at York. And I think in the middle of them 2 games there was the Featherstone game at home as well. I think that was just after Toulouse game away, where Whitehaven should have won that afternoon as well. It was 24-20, 28 or something like that. Whitehaven should have beat Featherstone on that afternoon, and should come on it wasn't maybe unexpected in terms of the performance, but the scoreline was certainly one that no Whitehaven fan would have expected going to York on that afternoon.
So your next run of 4 games, for me, you might disagree with this. This is probably where I think you could have a right result here would have kept you up. So obviously in that 4-game run you had 2 draws against Widnes and Doncaster, and including a bit of a defeat to a 30 points to 6 defeat to Wakefield as well. Well, when you're looking at that Widnes and Doncaster sort of game there, you're thinking, yeah, a bit of luck there. That could have been the game that could have kept us up.
Doncaster. Doncaster's the game for me. Widnes come back into that game at Widnes and probably deserved a point, well deserved, but you'd have been disappointed with a draw, but so with a defeat, but you're thinking we've played well there. Doncaster was the game that Whitehaven should have got the 2 points in. Yeah, that coming away from that game, that draw felt like a defeat, and where the draw at Widnes, you think we haven't done that before. Do you know what I mean? It's been a long time since a Whitehaven side had got anything at Widnes in terms of league points. Obviously, they drew earlier on in pre-season, but with league victories on the line, you thought, yeah, it's that Doncaster game. There's a couple of games throughout the season. Doncaster, obviously the Widnes game where both draws and you think we played well enough to get 2 points on that afternoon. But then that Featherstone game as well at home, which I mentioned, that Whitehaven had enough opportunities, and if they were clinical enough on that afternoon, had an opportunity. And yeah, I mean, it's only obviously in hindsight, and hindsight is a beautiful, magical thing, isn't it? That you look back and go, yeah, that's probably relegated us. I mean, obviously all the issues that went on later on in the season, which we'll touch on, but yeah, drawn at Widnes, a drawn at Doncaster, both in winning positions. You think, yeah, that's the game that's come back to bite Haven at the end of the season.
Yeah, and you end up having a good rebound win as well versus Dewsbury, and obviously end up going down, but they didn't really sort of go down and just rolled over. They went down swinging really, Dewsbury, so it was a 38-12 win, was it?
Yeah, and White Dewsbury winning at half-time. If I remember right, it was 12 points to 8. Or something along them lines. Whitehaven had went up early doors and Dewsbury had hit back, and you think, oh, because Dewsbury were maybe 9-10 games into their run at sort of that point. I can't remember, that would have been like round 11, round 12, something like that, pretty much halfway. And then obviously they'd only won once in the league at that point, which was the second game in on the Good Friday derby against Batley. And if they were wanting to try and, I imagine they would have really targeted that to try and get back on track. And like you said, they find themselves up at the break. I imagine Jonty Gawley will put a rocket up Whitehaven at half time, and they come out and they're a completely different side and done well to turn the game round and were clinical enough to comfortably take a victory. Because if you look at the results, similar to what you did with the Toulouse, you think, oh, well, it's a toweling. But then you have a look for Whitehaven and you go, well, they've been pretty comfortable there. But it was anything but. Dewsbury put up a very good performance in that first half, and Whitehaven were made to work hard for their points on that afternoon.
So going to your next run of 3 games, for me, this is where the crack started to show from an outside perspective. So obviously you've had your losses to Halifax, Featherstone and Toulouse at that point, I think. So you end up with a 66-0 defeat to Featherstone. And I think Gebby get put in the bin twice during that game.
Yeah.
Travel to Halifax with 15 men. Like I said, that was probably when the crack started to show from an outside perspective. And then obviously you pushed Toulouse close to a 24-34 loss there.
That Featherstone one, I pretty much wiped that from their memory. It was an awful afternoon. And not just into, when you say it's an awful afternoon, you mean in weather and everything was against you. It wasn't. It was an awful afternoon. And I don't know what it was, because it was the day of Rob Butler's funeral. So I don't know if just Yorkshire on that afternoon, or West Yorkshire especially, was especially pumped up for that one. But Whitehaven never seemed to have got off the bus. Featherstone, you mentioned Gebby sin bin twice. So having to play 20 minutes with 12 men. And then the game after that, Halifax, which I don't think we went especially with 15 men. Could it have been 16 and then Jamie Doran had come on, but then he'd done his MCL in the warm-up. There was a collision in the warm-up. I think it was Lachlan Hannigan had slipped and clattered into Jamie's knee, and I pretty much ended Jamie's season. He didn't play again. He'd come on and sort of hobbled around for 10 minutes, I think, either side of half time to try and do a job. But it ended his season, and yeah, that was where Whitehaven were 14-0 up. Yeah, 14-0 up, 10 minutes going into 10 minutes before half time, and Halifax scored against the run of play late on in that first half, and the second half was, yeah, I think this is where the cracks started the show, as you mentioned, Andy. When you look back at it now, you go, yeah, there was problems starting to be had there, and like say hindsight. I said earlier on, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but you look back now and you go, yeah, something wasn't right within the camp at that point, and you can look back and then pinpoint these things. But yeah, them games were real tough for Jonty's side, and like you said, that's where numbers started to dwindle and cracks started to appear.
Yeah, you touch on the injury to Jamie there as well. He was a massive player. Like we spoke about it earlier, just sort of before we started doing the podcasts. I'm a bit of a fan of his as well. I think his kicking game's class, and just with a player like that being down as well, it's a big cog in the machine, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and he'd been doing a job at Jamie, because obviously Whitehaven had practically only had one hooker the majority of the season, and he was doing a job, whether it was him starting and or going into 9 later on, or whether it was him coming off the bench. And sort of that first part of the season, there was sort of 3 going into 2 with Jammer, Jamie, Jake and Lockie Hannigan, and them 3 were sort of all going in between apart. But later on, it was sort of Jake and Lockie had nailed down the 6 and 7, but only because Jamie had been doing a job at 9. He's a real important cog of any team. He's Jamie Doran, and he'd ruined Whitehaven many a time playing for Workington, and it was so exciting to have him in a Whitehaven shirt over the last couple of seasons. And yeah, to lose a player of Jamie's stature and what he can do even in at 9 or leading you around at half, that was where it started to really go wrong for Whitehaven and going into what was obviously the second half of the season.
So just as you touched on there, going into the second half of the season, go away to Swinton and you beat them again, 20 points to 22, and get a lion bar for your travels as well, did you, mate? Yeah,
Riggy at Swinton, who I mentioned last week. I'm really looking forward to seeing him again next year. It was one of the few positives for Swinton going down, in my opinion, is I get to see the guys at Swinton next year. They're a great bunch. But yeah, another game that Whitehaven had, and sort of a complete role reversal of that game at Halifax, where they were 14-0, 16-0 down. And Jay Carter scored. Oh, sorry, it was Carter or Hannigan? It was one of them. Potentially Hannigan had scored sort of late on in that first half to bring Whitehaven back into it. And the second half just sort of turned around. They weren't dominant in any way. It was a real tough performance, but they were clinical with the opportunities that they had taken, and they were clinical enough. Swinton had dropped the ball sort of late on, maybe 7 or 8 minutes to go, and Whitehaven were the quickest to react and were able to dive on it. I still don't know who scored the try now. I think I give it to Will Evans, but I think I was wrong in the commentary at the time. I've looked back and watched it a million times, and I still couldn't tell you who scored the try, but I give it to Will Evans on the afternoon. And yeah, it was a real big result for Whitehaven, because you feel that if they were going to stay up, that was one they were going to need to win, and then obviously they did. And yeah, it felt like a real big result on Jonty Gawley's birthday as well. So what a result for that for his 2 points on that afternoon. And I remember interviewing him afterwards I'd spoken to him a couple of times, obviously, but for Whitehaven social media. And just as we were about to start, the Whitehaven fans started serenading him, singing happy birthday. So yeah, it was one of them. It was a great result for Whitehaven to turn it round. And unfortunately, I don't want to spoil it for anyone that doesn't know, but there wasn't too many of them sort of afternoons in the rest of the season.
Yeah, so we're going the dark cloud started to rumble over West Cumbria with 3 losses on the bounce, including 2 big defeats, a 78-24 loss to Sheffield and a 58-0 defeat to Bradford. And then in that period as well, the club and then publicly opens up about the issues with the finances as well. So don't just rain it paused, doesn't it?
I still don't know how we scored 24 points at Sheffield. I look now and go, how? Because that was probably up there with the worst performance of the season. I mentioned obviously the Batley game earlier was the worst home performance, but that at Sheffield was the worst performance.
So I think Sheffield they were a weird team for me. Me and Dan went away and we did the comms for Barrow away at Sheffield, and they're one of the by far the best attacking rugby league teams I saw in that season. Just always looking to hit their edges with the quick passes. We couldn't control them, but I don't know what happened to their season, to be honest. It just, I do, but
yeah, well, we all know what happened. They lost Mark Aston. That was it. They just obviously hit rock bottom after that. But that was Aston's last game before the suspension hit. Before him and the physio was obviously put down with a no fault suspension, and we're not going to go any further into that. But that was the last game, and I think they got beat the week before at home to Swinton. I think it was the week. There was sort of a couple of. I think it was the week after. Yeah, the week. Yeah, I think we played Swinton and we'd won. Then they went to Sheffield and won. So you think, oh well, we've beat Swinton. Swinton's gone there and picked up the victory. We could do something here. And they were on a bad run of form themselves. Sheffield, I think they'd lost 2 back-to-back at that point, which is a bad run for Sheffield before obviously what happened towards the end of the season. You think, if we have a good day and they remain indifferent, could get something there. And then you're 42-0 down at half-time and you just think, or where did that come from? Was it 42-4 or 42-6 down at half-time? Jake Maizen with another amazing try going from sort of 70 metres through about 6 or 7 players to get Whitehaven's only try in that first half. And Whitehaven's tries in the second half only come from Sheffield sloppiness. They didn't do anything. I think, and Whitehaven probably played better at Bradford and didn't get any points on the board than what they did at Sheffield. It's just what it is. But yeah, the sort of, I can't remember the exact timeline. I don't know if the video that we done with Les Messenger, where obviously Whitehaven publicly announced their issues. I can't remember if that was before or after the Bradford game, but Whitehaven struggled going to that Bradford game. Really, really struggled. And there was a couple of players who were and ahhing about playing, and one or two didn't play. One did. Callum Shaw played. Whitehaven had issues that week in terms of they didn't train because of whatever issues were going on. So I think it could have been the week before. I think it was the week before it was announced, and I think I'd done the interview with Les afterwards. But he met his winger for the first time 90 minutes before kickoff. That was the first time he'd met Callum Shaw, which is, he talks about it in the interview, which we're going to release later on this week. But how can you go into professional rugby league at something like that? It just shows, going down 15, 16 players, I think it was, and you lose in that it was 30 plus degrees or 20, 27, 28 degrees. It's as small pitch as it is at Bradford, so you're not getting any sort of rest. You're getting battered down the middle, and it just took its toll in the end up. And it was a difficult watch, as it proved to be probably for the remainder of the season.
So going into it was Jonty's last game versus Doncaster with a 28-24 win. Obviously, we all know what happened there. 2 directors joined the club. Carl's brought in on the Thursday. But yeah, he's gone off on a high now.
So yeah, obviously that was the game, wasn't it? The game. And I'd spoke to Jonty on Thursday night of that week after training, because it was rugby league's worst kept secret, or Cumbria's rugby league's worst kept secret, that he was leaving at the end of the season anyways. So I spoke to him and I said once we'd done, I said I want to crack with you, mate, if that's all right. And he went, yeah. What's up? I said, what do you want to do? And he just looked at me and I went, come on, like, what do you want to do? When do you want to announce obviously the news? And we'd had a conversation, and he wanted to do similar to what Gary Charlton had done. He wanted to leave it till last week of the season. He wanted to say goodbye at that last home game. And, because as it always is, there's always going to be a turnaround in players. And, he wanted to do similar. He wanted to announce it that week. It probably wasn't going to be the sign-off he wanted. He was hoping to get in that final, game of the final position in the playoffs, as obviously as he alluded to in that opening of the interview that we done. And, but he wanted to say goodbye that week. He wanted to do it properly. And said, yeah, no problem, mate. I said, we'll have a crack over the next few weeks, and we'll plan. We'll have a sit down if you want, and sort of such things like that. But we'll do that, and what can we do? Yeah, all right, mate, no problem. And then Friday lunchtime, I get a phone call and say there's directors coming back. Can we put an announcement out? I said, yeah, no problem. Let me know. Let me know who's coming back. Send us all the details over, and we'll go with it. And the club posted Saturday morning that these directors are coming back in to, for the want of a better phrase, to steady the ship, to try and help the club out. A lot of them were probably there still anyways in sort of background roles or just helping out as and when needed. But, they were coming back. They were officially coming back in. They'd all signed themselves back on at company's house. And, so it was all going to be official and sort of such things like that. And then obviously the working relationship between some that had come back and Jonty obviously wasn't the best, and what happened, and he felt that he wasn't able to do what he wanted to do. He didn't know when they were coming back, if they were coming back straight away, whether it's going to be the end of the season. And I think he said he's got his models, and he couldn't work with those that he felt he couldn't work with those that had come back. And obviously what transpired later on in terms of, obviously that probably would have been his last game anyways if he didn't make that decision, which I'm not going to go into it too much, but I think that would have been a shame, because he wasn't getting what he wanted, and he didn't get what he wanted. And I mean, life sometimes isn't fair, is it? But yeah, it was going to be a tough week anyways after that, whichever way it went for Whitehaven. I just didn't think that it was going to be as tough as it ended up being for the next 124 hours or whatever it would have been.
Yeah, so as we're going in through the week, all comes out about, it's looking like you're not going to have a squad for the Dewsbury game. Kyle Amore's now come in. He's doing that purely voluntary, isn't he, from my understanding?
I think so. I mean, obviously, I think he does work with one of the club's main sponsors. So I think it sort of went hand in hand. Sort of with that, I think the club, that them sponsors were happy for him to take that role up and sort of go on with that. And yeah, all fair play to, obviously, I've only talked about Jonty so far, but fair play to Kyle Amore for coming in. And when he found out what a mess it was, for sticking there, he didn't have to do that. He could have stayed at home. He could have carried on doing his television work, but he took up the mantle. And that Tuesday afternoon was something else, completely something else. He left his home with a full playing squad, in place, a full playing squad in place. I mean, not full, but, as many as there could be. He left with a full backroom staff still in place. He left with a board of directors in place. And by the time he got from Sailends to Whitehaven, he didn't have a playing squad. He didn't have a team manager. He didn't have any backroom staff. And he didn't have any players. What a journey. What a journey. It's only 3 hours from St Helens to Whitehaven. But yeah, what a journey, and what an afternoon. I was down that afternoon, just speaking, didn't have any inkling of what was going to happen. But what an afternoon. And I spoke to Kyle afterwards, and Look North were coming to speak to him, and we're coming to do a positive piece on, obviously, what it meant for the club for the rest of the season. And what they got was, oh yeah, by the way, we're probably not going to fulfill our fixtures for the rest of the season. The poor lad who rocked up to do the sort of camera work was just given a couple of questions by sort of the sports guys, just so they could maybe use 30 seconds of any of it. And I'm sort of having to feed him, or Kyle's having to sort of explain what's happening. It was unreal. It was just something that I didn't expect I'd ever have to cover. And then that next few days, I can only feel sorry for the wife, because I was non-existent, and it was my oldest birthday in between. So I'm just like, I just was non-existent for 48 hours, because my phone was going constantly. Obviously my role is of what I do for Whitehaven, as well as Cumbria, and obviously this as well. My phone didn't stop for 48 to 72 hours, with every media organisation involved in rugby league wanting to know what's going on. Or I'm speaking to media guys at RFL, like trying to say, well, what, I'm trying to get an answer. I've got sort of 4 different hats on. I've got my Whitehaven hat on when I'm trying to keep the peace, but then I've got my Radio Cumbria hat on, and, everyone else trying to go, well, if Whitehaven don't come back for this, what are the consequences? So I'm trying to go it from 2 or 3 different divot points. It was a crazy 48 hours of where I was speaking to Kyle, I was speaking to the RFL, I was speaking to those at the club, I was speaking to, whoever it was, just to, is there a real opportunity we're not going to Dewsbury on Sunday? Like, is this actually not going to happen? Are we genuinely going to forfeit a fixture, which would have been a 48-0 loss and no doubt a 12-point deduction coming in, and your season's finished there and then? So there was a real possibility, and I mean a real possibility, that would have been Whitehaven Rugby League done and dusted, because I don't think the RFL would grant Whitehaven a licence. A new Phoenix club, if a Phoenix club had to rise from the ashes following whatever this was going to be, they wouldn't have got a licence. They wouldn't have been granted anything. This could have been the real final nail in the coffin. And I think they were probably only 24, 36 hours away from that, from that being a serious possibility in terms of, well, if these get these deductions, you can imagine sponsors are going to pull out left, right and centre, potentially. And it was going to cause massive, massive rifts. And so, yeah, it was a crazy, crazy 48 hours. I don't even think Netflix would have wrote something like that.
Well, you could get them involved in it, maybe get a montage going as well of looking under the kitchen sink cupboard and, there's a fullback there, I'll get him out, and slowly use that to build up your 14 players for the Dewsbury kit.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. And when Kyle had named his squad, and I think was it 15 or 16 he named, I can't remember, but I remember speaking to him on that Thursday, and it was we need to be putting positive out here, but internally they knew what they were going in with. They knew how tough it was going to be going down to Dewsbury on that Sunday afternoon. And I remember turning up to the game, and I was speaking to Marcus Walker, Dewsbury centre, who wasn't playing that afternoon. He was the 18th man, but he was formerly of Whitehaven as well. He had a loan spell from when he was at Hull. And he just looked at me and he went, you only come with 14? Yep. And he was like, wow. Like they just didn't expect that to come down with 14, and the 14 that did take to the field, I described him in the commentary afterwards. They were heroes. What had went on that week to what they feel they needed to do, whatever your opinion is on that, they stuck together. And I think that really grouped them together sort of that week of they done what they felt they needed to do, whether your opinion is they shouldn't have done that, they should have done that or whatever. They felt what they needed to do. They stuck together as a group. And then they went and backed it up, didn't they? They went and showed that, we may be right in what we done, or to go and get that 2 points at Dewsbury on. I still don't get how it happened now. I don't get how in a professional rugby league game you go down with only one sub, and that one sub who's been wearing a boot due to a broken foot still only 4 days earlier. I don't get how you go and get the victory. I still don't understand it, and I don't think I ever will. But that whatever happened for that 80 minutes at Dewsbury on that afternoon was magical. Just the same shame the rest of the season didn't pan out that way.
Yeah, so massive fair play to them 14 lads for stepping up as well and getting that 18-10 points or 8-point win against Dewsbury. Unfortunately, your next 4 games is probably your what sealed the deal for you, really, wasn't it? You had heavy losses against York and Wakefield, and then a derby loss versus the mighty Barrow Raiders, I think 34-14 there, where I think that all but confirmed your relegation. Yeah,
massively. That game against York, probably that's where reality bit of, you're in for a challenge here, fellas. I think obviously everyone was still on such a high after the Dewsbury game, and they felt, they could do this, And I think the talk internally was, you can do something special. Whatever's gone on in the previous months or previous 18 months, because you've got to remember Whitehaven had similar issues, not obviously quite to this scale, but they had similar issues back in 2023 where players left the club, 1 returned, but 2 didn't. And they were sort of struggling then, but obviously I think that's when reality bit in the York game and probably realised what a challenge this was going to be. Going to Wakefield, I think you could always write that one off. I think the only thing you could probably hope for was to try and keep the score down in terms of points difference, because despite what had happened in the previous few weeks and previous few months in terms of them towelings at Featherstone and Sheffield, there was a potential it could come down to points difference. And if you can, if a couple of clubs have towelings elsewhere, you never know. You might be able to sneak your way in. But yeah, that Barrow game, that's where it was confirmed, essentially. You know what I mean? It was always going to be tough going to Batley the week after, but yeah, that was the big one. It had that feel about it. We obviously started. Well, we'd done another Zoomcast, didn't we? We posted on our Facebook pages and we spoke that week about what an important game it was going to be and how the previous games had been so tight in terms of the league fixtures. And at that point, obviously, it wasn't known what Whitehaven were going to do in terms of squads and sort of such things like that. We talked about what sort of numbers were Whitehaven going to have, and they were obviously, as you used to keep calling it, they were able to play the COVID card. What will be, will be. They were able to, they found a rule and they were able to use that rule, and they were able to get players into the squad, and it just, you knew that game, whoever got the victory on that afternoon knew it was going to be, they were the ones who were probably going to stay in the division. And Whitehaven just weren't able to do enough. I think at that point it really had started to bite in terms of numbers, and obviously it was the only time they were able to name a 17 for the following Kyle Amo's interim spell in charge. It was the only time he ever named a 17, and I think that probably showed that what importance it had, because players were probably playing who shouldn't have been playing, and there was a number of players in that team who shouldn't have played, and that was probably the final half of the season. Curtis Tia played with an injury all, that final half of the season, that even if you have 20 players, he's probably one that's sitting down. Ryan King, who missed a few games, obviously missed that Derby game, and Whitehaven obviously missed Jake Maizen, who didn't play after that Doncaster game. There's a number of players that they missed out on, but yeah, that game, that, what was it at half time? I'm just looking, it was 14-10 at half time to the Raiders, and you just felt if Whitehaven could come out and try and compete in that second half, that you never know. It's a derby game, anything could happen, but I just think everything that had gone in the previous weeks had been far too much, and they weren't able to compete. And I think that's pretty much where relegation was confirmed. You weren't expecting to go to Batley the week after and get anything, and yeah, that it all comes down to that game, and they weren't able to deliver the goods.
See, I am trying to take them high card on here, like the high road here, and not do the sad monologue, but I'm looking at the button for it, just so you know. I won't do it. I'll be the better person. But yeah, you obviously all the pressure's off now for this last game going to Halifax, with your 23 points to 20 win. Obviously, Jack Hensington, Jack Kellett's from Hensington's your star of the show there, and I still don't know how that try didn't count for him. I've watched that a few times. That baffles me. And then obviously you have the unfortunate injury to Newts as well during that game.
Yeah, Whitehaven was 16-0 down in that game, and you look and you go, what's this going to be? I remember I'd former Whitehaven captain Mark Shackley on the commentary with me on Radio Cumbria on that afternoon, and it's 16 up for Halifax. We were waxing lyrical, and you go, how are this Halifax side are where they are, and then Whitehaven put the smallest bit of pressure on them, and they cracked, and then we just both looked at each other and go, that's why they are where they are. The same player, same shift to the right 3 times. The ball went on a different player on each occasion, and they were able to, but they put the same play on from just outside the left-hand side post, shifted it right, and scored on 3 separate occasions, and you go, that's why they are where they are. Because you look at that Halifax side, James Woodburn-Hall, Joe Keys, Louis Dufresne, James Saltonstall, Tangata, Leroy, Adam O'Brien in at 9. You look at that Halifax side and you go, how are you obviously, and obviously they've had their issues, and theirs were probably worse than Whitehaven's in terms of money owed, but they were able to keep theirs in-house until the final weeks of the season, where I think they had a similar meeting to what Whitehaven did. Their players, that they were at serious risk of, we won't play. And that, you know what I mean? I think that's, I think everyone's obviously looked at, obviously, we mentioned all them players and didn't even mention Gareth Widdop. He didn't play on that afternoon, but you know, you look and you go, you've got all these sort of players. How are you are where you are? But they've had their own issues of the Panthers, and they're still sort of reeling from that and going into next season. I think it could be difficult for them. But yeah, it was a great afternoon up until that sort of just after the hour mark where Newts picked up that injury, and it looked serious because of how the doctor and the physios were reacting to it. And yeah, he was helped off the field. He walked off the field, bearing in mind, and you look back now and you think, how? But you know what I mean? He was walked off, but they had hold of his head and sort of neck area. And then obviously, you know, what transpired, and obviously we continue to wish Newts well in his recovery. But yeah, it was, I think Whitehaven done that. They wanted to do that. That group wanted to do that for themselves. They didn't want to do it for the club, or the mayor wanted to. But what I'm saying, they wanted it for themselves. They wanted to try and sign off on a high, because majority of them who played on that afternoon, if not potentially all of them, won't wear a Whitehaven shirt again next season. I think there's only 2 players, 3 maximum, who may be wearing Whitehaven colours who were in this squad this season. None of them played on that afternoon. Well, one, but he's currently wearing a halo. So we don't know what he's going to be able to do over the next months. So yeah, I think it was that group we want to sign off on a high. We want to show what we can do, and you know, show why Jonty Gawley had the faith in them at the start of the season to get 6th in the table. It was a vastly different group at the end of the season compared to the start of it, but I think they wanted to do that for themselves and show that, yeah, we found it tough this season, but given an opportunity, this is what we could have done.
Yeah, so obviously we've gone over there. That's relegation confirmed now, gone down on a high. But, you know, like we've been talking about the transfers and everything like that. We'll go into that later on in the week. But, you know, you're looking at the foundations you're building there. It's looking like quite a solid sort of bright future for the club. And one thing me and Dan said to you was, you know, you've got a lot of these foreign imports in. You know, where's these sort of local lads that you spine your team? Like you brought Jack Kellett in towards the end, he shone through. I don't know what his situation was, whether you could have brought him sooner or not, but could that have been a player who could have helped you out in them early games the earlier stages where, you know, you start going down players, bring a few more of these amateur lads in who could have maybe done the job for you?
Potentially, but I think you've got to remember that when all this was done was after that transfer deadline, and I think towards that final game, I think the RFL had essentially said, that's not going to make a difference. You can, you know, fulfill the fixture, do what you've got to do to fulfill the fixture. And, you know, obviously Jack Kellett seems to have been a benefactor of that. He's shown on that afternoon, should have got a 4-pointer, set up the only try of the second half for Whitehaven through Jake Carter. And, you know, he's going to be in Whitehaven colours next season. And yeah, I don't think they could have done. I don't think they could have went cap in hand. Obviously, with what was on the line. You know, it was controversial enough, if you like, obviously, with what happened going into that Raiders game, that if they were given dispensation to sign players after the deadline and then they stayed in the division, I'd imagine that they'd been challenged in a court of law somewhere. I'd imagine whoever else was going to go down, if it was the Raiders or that was going to go down automatically, or whether it was going to be Swinton who went down automatically, and, you know, Whitehaven had scraped themselves into that playoff, and it's probably a good job they didn't scrape themselves into that playoff, because they had to borrow players on left, right and centre to ensure they could fulfil that Halifax fixture. And I know fine well that 2 of them were away, or were going to be away, if they made it into that playoff. So if Whitehaven had made it into that playoff, they'd have probably been playing Rugby League 9s, because they'd have been that short on that short of players. But yeah, I mean, going into a quick look at, I know we'll delve into it in the next few months, but a quick look at what next season holds, obviously for Whitehaven, it's that buzzword, isn't it? It's been the big part of what's been coming out from the club, and is rebuild. And I think obviously the job swap, where Anthony Murray's took up the coaching reins, and obviously Jonty's took up the reins at Workington, and Muzz has got a reputation for bringing local players in. He'd done it at the Raiders when he was first at the Raiders all them years ago, and then he's fetched in a number of community players in his time at North Wales on a budget that was an absolute shoestring compared to what he's probably got now, despite he probably being vastly reduced compared to what Whitehaven's used, obviously, in this 2024 season. He's done some miracles at times as Muzzer, and no one's expecting anything from him this year. I think internally, at least, that is the what will be the message, as in just ensure we can compete. Ensure that these players are there that's going to be building up. No one's expecting anything from Whitehaven. No one should expect anything from Whitehaven going into 2025. Anything that comes is a bonus. And I know this is what we all said going into that 2019 season, where it was rebuilt, going local, when Gary Charlton and Jonty Gawley first took over, and the likes of Sam Forrester come in, and players of that sort of ilk who come in and sort of, it was rebuilt, and no one was expecting anything, and something magical happened, but that only happens once in a lifetime. I'm not expecting Whitehaven to do that twice in 6 years. So yeah, while it's great that the club's bringing this local contingent in, it's an untested, unchallenged group at this level they're going to be playing at. And there's many around West Cumbria many around Cumbria that go, Westbrow could step into League One and they could go and do this and go and do that, or Kells could go and do this and Kells could go and do that, or League One's a tough league. It's only getting tougher and tougher. Yeah, there was them sides in it. Excuse me. There was them sides in it a few years ago who, maybe the likes of your Hemmels and your West Waleses and your Scholars towards the end. Yeah, Kells did beat Hemel in the Challenge Cup, and Westbrow running West Wales, or South Wales as it potentially could have been, a few years ago, close in the Challenge Cup at the recreation ground. And yeah, they probably could do them, but it is a huge step up to what is now going to be a very, very competitive League One, with 3 teams coming down from the Championship, and a Midland side who look determined to spend, and Rochdale and Hunslet reeling from not, a Keighley side who's going to be reeling. I said Hunslet there, I almost forgot they got promoted, but a Keighley and a Rochdale side will be reeling from not making that final with Swinton and having the opportunity, especially Keighley. No one expected them to be playing League One rugby this season. Going into that game against Swinton, going into that game against Hunslet in that playoff, everyone, probably apart from Hunslet themselves, expected to be playing Swinton in that playoff. So yeah, they'll be reeling from that. And so yeah, it's going to be really tough for this group of players, whoever Whitehaven are putting together. And they've obviously brought in some people back in, the likes of Jordan Burns and Jordan Thompson, who was announced this evening as we sort of speak. There's some names there coming in over the next few weeks. It's going to be, bringing some experienced heads in, but it's still going to be very, very tough for a very young, inexperienced group of players going into 2025.
So that's the end of our Whitehaven season review. So thanks for going over that with us, Jordan. And hopefully you'll have try to say it with a straight face. Hopefully you'll have a bit of a better season and could be able to compete comfortably. I can't see who's been the whipping voice for that league, to be honest.
Yeah, and I'm not saying, I don't know if there will be any whipping boys. I mean, obviously, Gould's coming in and signing left, right and centre. They're signing experience, but how much are they going to be able to do? Sometimes we often say with these new sides, don't we, how often are they going to be able to keep these experienced players? Is Brett Ferris really going to want to travel to Cumbria twice? Is he really going to go to Colwyn Bay? Is he going to want to go to Cornwall? You know what I mean? Them sort of things. Is Jamie Shaw going to want to make that trip to Cornwall or Bedford, wherever they're going to turn up? We might find out the day before the bloody fixtures are announced whether there's any truth in that sort of story. But yeah, it's going to be it's the toughest and most competitive League One ever. And here we are, not even 4 weeks after the last one's ended. So yeah, it's going to be a really tough, and it'll be a tough learning curve. There'll be some bumps in the road for this Whitehaven squad next season, but as long as that squad play together and stay together and don't disgrace themselves, and I say that in the nicest way possible, then I'm sure there'll be plenty of backing from the Whitehaven public, because this is what some of them's been calling for. They've been calling for a locally Cumbrian-based, Cumbrian-centric squad. It's exactly what they're going to get under Anthony Murray in 2025.
So we'll finish off with a reminder. Please, sort of, if you can, have a crack at that speak pipe and leave us a voice note as well. Try and get your voice on the podcast. And cheers for your time tonight, Jordan.
Yeah, nobody's home, mate. Yeah, let's get your thoughts in, ladies and gents, and let's see. We want this to be the Cumbrian podcast, of course, but we want it to be the People's Cumbrian podcast. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your thoughts and opinions. Next week, I'm not here, so they're going to need some extra voices. It's the Raiders season review next week, isn't it? So I'm leaving that to all your three. I'm going to go and sum myself up in Portugal and let you discuss all things Barrow Raiders.
Cheers, mate. Enjoy your holiday.
Cheers, man.